My name is Harper Lane, and I am 32 years old. If you'd met me a year ago, you would have thought I was just a small business owner with a tight budget and a decent work ethic. You wouldn't have seen the part where my family treated my bank account like a community well. You definitely wouldn't have guessed that the first time I truly said no to them, they tried to punish me with a tropical vacation. It started with a sentence that sounded harmless. "We're going to Hawaii," my mother said over Sunday lunch. "You can come too if you pay your own way." She said it casually, like she was inviting me to the grocery store. My father nodded like this was some generous offer. My sister Tessa scrolled on her phone, pretending not to listen, while her boyfriend Liam smiled politely at the table like he'd walked into a commercial for a family he didn't know yet. "Thanks," I said, "but I can't do that right now. Busy quarter, tight budget." My mom's mouth tightened. "With all that money you make," she said, "you're too cheap to take one little trip with your family?" I swallowed the retort that wanted to come out. She had no idea how much equipment costs, how heavy payroll sits on your chest at night, how one slow month can undo 3 good ones. "It's not about being cheap," I said. "I just have other priorities." She sighed dramatically, like I'd just refused to donate a kidney. "Fine," she said. "It's your loss. We'll go without you." I figured that was it. They'd go, come back with cheesy souvenirs and sunburns, and life would go on. I had no idea they were planning to take me along anyway, just without asking. A week before their flight, I was sitting in my office, half listening to a podcast and half staring at an invoice when I opened my credit card app. I wasn't checking for fun. I needed to make sure I had enough available credit for a piece of equipment I'd been putting off buying. The number hit me like a punch. Available credit, almost nothing. I blinked and scrolled. There it was, not one charge, a list. Airline tickets, beachfront resort in Maui, spa packages, fine dining pre-bookings, romantic excursion add-ons that sounded like something you'd see in a honeymoon brochure. Total 11 thefts. For a split second, I thought my card had been stolen. Then I tapped into the booking details. The reservation was under my name, my address, my email. I stared at the screen, feeling heat crawl up my neck. I called the resort. "Hi, this is Harper Lane," I said. "I think there's been a mistake. I'm seeing a reservation I didn't make." The woman on the line was cheerful, too cheerful. "Oh, Ms. Lane, the Hawaii booking? Yes. We have you and your party of 4 arriving on—" "Party of 4?" I cut in. "Yes. Your parents, your sister Tessa, and her boyfriend Liam. All confirmed." My hand tightened around the phone. "And how," I said carefully, "did you receive payment for that booking?" "On the card ending in—" She read off the last 4 digits of my business credit card, the one I'd only given my mother access to for emergencies. My stomach dropped. "Right," I said. "Thank you. I need to cancel that immediately." There was a pause. "You want to cancel the whole thing?" she asked. "You're within the window, but there may be—" "Yes," I said. "All of it, every part of it." She processed it. I hung up. My hands were trembling, but my mind felt suddenly, almost frighteningly clear. I didn't call my parents. I didn't text Tessa. I opened the app, hit dispute all, then called the credit card company, explained the unauthorized charges, and had the card blocked and replaced. 15 minutes. That's all it took to undo weeks of scheming. I was walking out of my office when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I recognized. Liam. We weren't close then. He was Tessa's boyfriend, not mine. To me, he was just the polite guy who brought my mom flowers on holidays and pretended not to hear the way she weaponized stories. His text was short. "They're refusing to give us our tickets. What did you do?" I stared at it for a long second, feeling something dark and tired uncoil in my chest. Then I typed back, "What you said, I'm paying my own way." I hit send. I didn't get a response. I didn't hear anything else until the next morning, when someone started pounding on my front door at 9 a.m. Not knocking, pounding. I opened it a crack. My parents stood on the porch, red-faced and furious. Tessa was behind them, jaw clenched. Liam looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. They didn't wait for an invitation. They pushed past me into the living room, the air filling with overlapping accusations. "How could you do this to us?" my mother shouted. $11,500, Harper, my father added, like I'd set it on fire instead of preventing theft. Tessa wouldn't look at me. Liam stayed near the doorway, arms folded, watching. I shut the door and faced them. "Interesting choice of words," I said. "You really want to talk about what I did to you?" "We're supposed to be on a plane right now," my mother snapped. "They announced our names at the gate like we were criminals. Do you know how humiliated I was?" "Probably about as humiliated as I felt," I said evenly. Finding out my emergency card was used to book your luxury vacation without my permission. My sister's eyes flickered, just for a second. We were going to pay you back, she lied. With what? I asked. The same imaginary money you've been promising for the last 5 years? My father tried a different tactic. We just wanted to do something nice for the family, he said. A chance to make memories. You make the most money out of all of us, Harper. We assumed you'd be happy to help. Help, I repeated, by paying 11.5 grand so you could pretend to be something you're not. My mother's nostrils flared. We were trying to show Liam what kind of family he'd be marrying into, she said. Stable, generous, together. You ruined that. There it was. The truth. This wasn't a trip. It was a performance. They weren't just buying plane tickets, they were buying an illusion, with my credit. Slowly, I turned to look at Liam. Did they tell you I offered to pay for everything? I asked. His silence was answer enough. My mom glared at me. We told him you wanted to, she said, because you are family, or you were, before you did this. I felt something shift inside me, a thread snap. Let me make this very clear, I said. I gave you access to that card for emergencies. Not for spa packages, not for beachfront suites, not to buy my way into a family image you invented. My father scoffed. You're blowing this out of proportion. $11,500, I said quietly. That's not out of proportion. That's my rent, my payroll, my peace of mind. That's everything to me. And you didn't even ask. You just took. My mother's voice went cold. You're going to regret this, she said. People will know. I'll have to explain why we didn't go. Do you think I won't tell them what you did? Tell them, I said. Tell them you stole from your daughter and got caught. Tessa finally looked at me then. Her eyes were hard. You made your point, she said. You didn't have to humiliate us. Something in me laughed, bitter and tired. I just corrected a fraud charge, I said. The humiliation part was all you. They eventually ran out of words. They stormed out in a wave of slammed doors and muttered curses. Liam hesitated at the threshold, still looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Is it true? He asked quietly. About the card? Yes, I said, and that's just one page of the book. He held my gaze for a long moment. Okay, he said, I'll call you. Then he left. I stood in the silence of my living room, feeling the aftershocks settle. The trip was canceled, the charges were disputed, but something much bigger had broken, and I was done pretending I didn't notice. That night, I logged into my business systems. For the past year, my mother had been helping with admin work. Emails, billing, a few client follow-ups. I paid her $2,200 a month and gave her access to limited systems. It made her feel important, made my life a little easier, and I told myself it kept the peace. I stared at her username on the dashboard. Then I revoked her access. Every login, every email, every shared password. I changed it all. I notified my clients personally that I'd be handling everything moving forward. By morning, my voicemail was a graveyard of messages from my mother ranging from confused to furious. How could you do this? She sobbed in one. You're letting money destroy this family, she raged in another. Not once did she say, I'm sorry. Not once did she mention the 11,500. Just like with the vacation, the problem wasn't what they took. It was that I shut the door. That was when I knew this wasn't over. If anything, it was just the beginning. Because next on my list wasn't an argument. It was a conversation with Liam. And whatever he did with the truth would change everything. When Liam finally texted, it wasn't some dramatic paragraph, just 3 words. Can we talk? We met at a small diner near his apartment. The kind of place with sticky menus and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the 90s. It was quiet, anonymous, perfect for conversations you didn't want traveling. He was already there when I walked in, hands wrapped around a mug, staring at nothing. Hey, I said. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw it. Confusion, not anger. Like someone had rearranged all the furniture in his life without warning. Hey, he echoed. I slid into the booth across from him. For a few seconds, we just listened to the hum of the kitchen, the clink of silverware, the low murmur of other people's problems. Just tell me the truth, he said finally. Did you really not know about the trip being on your card? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how small that question was compared to the reality. I didn't know about any of it, I said. I found out the same way you find out about fraud, through an app notification. He watched me carefully. So I told him everything. How I'd given my parents access to a secondary card strictly for emergencies. How they'd used it to book flights, a beachfront resort, spa packages, romantic excursions. How they tied it all to my name and address, betting on the fact that family guilt would make me pay up even if I was furious. I didn't pretty it up. I didn't soften the edges. You were never supposed to be the guest, I said. You were the audience. The proof. If you believed we were this generous, financially stable family, if you thought they had it all together, it wouldn't just make Tessa look good. It would make you feel like you owed them something. He went very still. I thought you'd offered, he said quietly. They told me you insisted, that you were the successful one and you wanted to treat everyone. Of course they did, I said. Loaded words spend easier than money. He huffed out a humorless laugh, then shook his head. You know what bothered me the most at the airport, he said? Not that the charges got declined, not that the tickets vanished. It was the way they reacted. Nobody looked scared that you might have been hacked. Nobody was worried about you, just panicking about how they'd look. His voice dropped even lower. That's when I realized you weren't the villain in this story. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The waitress came by, topped off our coffees. We both said thanks in unison. It sounded like a truce. I'm sorry they dragged you into this, I said. You didn't sign up for any of it. He shook his head. I did, though, he said. Not the fraud, but the family. I've been feeling like everything is curated, like I'm being shown a slideshow instead of the real thing. Welcome to the Lane family, I muttered. He smiled a little at that, then leaned back. Thank you for telling me, he said. Most people would have just let me believe the performance. I'm kind of done with performances, I said. They're expensive. We moved on to safer topics after that. Work, schedules, the weather. But something had shifted. The script my family had handed him was gone. He was starting to write his own. When we finally stood to leave, he paused. If you ever need anything with your business, he said, let me know. I mean that. You're clearly better at managing chaos than your family gives you credit for. I didn't take it seriously then. I had no idea that was the first hint of a door that would swing wide open later. A week passed. I was halfway through cleaning out an equipment closet at the warehouse. Dusty shelves, coiled cables, things I should have thrown out 2 years ago, when my phone rang. Liam. Hey, I answered, balancing a box on my hip. Got a minute? He asked. For you, maybe 2, I said. He laughed quietly, then got to the point. You remember when I said I might need help with chaos? I wasn't being polite. He walked me through it over the phone. A side business he'd started a couple of years back. Nothing flashy. Logistics, systems, some niche service that had taken off faster than he was ready for. Contracts were stacking up. Clients were calling. Money was coming in. But the back end? A mess. I can sell. I can build relationships, he said. But organization, scaling, processes, I'm duct taping everything together. It's not sustainable. And you think I'm duct tape? I asked. I think you're structural steel, he said. But we can start with duct tape. I leaned against a metal rack and closed my eyes for a second. You're serious? I asked. Very, he said. This wouldn't be a pity job, Harper. You'd be an equal partner. We split profit. You handle systems and operations. I handle growth and clients. I've run the numbers. We could make this work. I didn't say yes. Not out loud. But something inside me. Something tired, something squeezed dry by years of scraping by and caregiving and putting myself last, sat up and said, this. Pay attention to this. I'll need to think about it, I said. Good, he replied. I'd worry if you didn't. I'll send you the numbers. No pressure. He did. They were solid. Not a fantasy, not a trust me bro setup. Actual clients, actual projections, actual work. For the first time, I saw a path that wasn't me trying to keep my little business on life support while my family bled it dry. But before I could step into something new, I knew I had to finish ending something old. The warehouse lease was coming up in a few months. My equipment was aging, my energy was worse. So I made a decision. No dramatic posts, no big I'm rebranding announcements. I stopped taking new contracts, wrapped up existing projects, sold off equipment to people who still had the capacity to love this grind. When clients asked why, I just said I was shifting direction. It wasn't a lie. Even in that quiet, my family noticed. It started with an email from Tessa, carefully written, polished, like she'd drafted it with someone looking over her shoulder. She talked about how she respected my feelings and understood I was upset. Then she pivoted right into how stressed Mom had been, how Dad was barely eating, how the house felt cold and tense. We were just trying to do something nice for once, she wrote, and it blew up. I wish you could see it from our side. There was not a single mention of $11,500, not a word about the stolen card, just vibes and victimhood. I read it twice, closed it, didn't answer. The next email was shorter, sharper. You've made your point, she wrote. Now you're just being cruel. You embarrassed us in front of Liam. You humiliated our parents. If you think you can just walk away after everything they did for you, you're delusional." That line again. Everything they did for you, like food and shelter when I was a child, were loans with compounding interest. I left that one unread too. My mother called. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes of crying, then spinning, then anger. "You're breaking this family. You're letting money change you. You cut my access to the business accounts over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding with a price tag bigger than my yearly rent." Next came my father. No tears, just rage. "I lost a consulting contract," he snapped in his voicemail. "Someone flagged my hours. You started this chain reaction when you made everything look suspicious. You made me look bad." It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Nobody apologizing, everybody blaming. Then came the email that told me exactly how they saw me. All three of them, Mom, Dad, and Tessa, on the same thread, offering a solution. They would start paying me back for the vacation, $100 per month. At that rate, I'd see my money sometime mid-retirement. They wanted me to agree in writing, probably so they could turn around and say, "See, she accepted our terms." I replied with one word, "No." That's when the tone changed from manipulative to vicious. Tessa sent me a text dripping with venom. "You sabotaged my relationship. You poisoned Liam against me. You used him to get revenge on your own family. I hope you end up broke and alone. He's just using you anyway." It should have hurt more than it did. But underneath the anger, all I heard was fear. Because for the first time, someone outside the family had seen behind the curtain, and she couldn't spin it. I called Liam the next day. "Just so you know," I said, "whatever happens between you and Tessa, thank you. For listening, for being honest with me, for the opportunity." "I should be thanking you," he said. "You saved me a very expensive mistake." That evening, he broke up with her. The fallout was immediate. My phone lit up with calls, texts, voicemails, emails. My mother screamed about me ruining Tessa's future. My father said I was no longer part of the family. Tessa threw every insult she could reach, while calling me irrelevant in the same breath. They made it clear I was dead to them. What they didn't know was that I had already started building a life without them. The dispute on the $11,500 was moving through the bank. The partnership with Liam was becoming real. The numbers we'd projected weren't dreams. They were on track. For the first time in a long time, I felt oxygen. And then, just as I thought the story had found its shape, something unexpected arrived in my mailbox. A letter, handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. David, Tessa's ex-husband. We hadn't spoken in years. My family had painted him as a villain after the divorce, disrespectful, unstable, unworthy. I had believed them because it was easier than asking questions. His letter was short. He said he'd heard a version of what happened from mutual acquaintances, that it didn't surprise him, that it was the same pattern he'd seen when he was married to my sister. Money appearing and disappearing, pressure disguised as expectation, loyalty measured in what you could pay for. He wrote that he was glad I'd gotten out, even if it was messy. And at the bottom, one strange sentence. "If you ever want something solid, give me a call. I might have a better seat for you at my table." I held the letter for a long time. Then I did what the old version of me never would have done. I dialed his number. When David answered the phone, his voice was exactly as I remembered it. Steady, low, a little guarded. The kind of voice that once seemed out of place in my family's loud, performative chaos. "Harper," he said, like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. "Yeah," I said, "I got your letter." A beat of quiet. "I wasn't sure whether to send it," he admitted, "but I figured if anyone understood what I went through with them, it would be you." "I didn't understand back then," I said honestly. "Not really. I'm sorry for that." "You don't need to apologize," he said. "You were on the inside. They're good at making the inside feel like truth." Those words hit harder than I expected. We made plans to meet for lunch the next day. Neutral place. Public. No expectations. I didn't tell Liam. I didn't tell anyone. It felt like I was stepping into the second half of a story I didn't realize had been waiting for me. David looked different in person. Confident. Calmer, like someone who had spent years rebuilding himself in peace, far from the gravitational pull of my family. He stood when I arrived and offered a handshake that turned into a warm, brief hug. "You look good," he said. "You too," I replied. We sat across from each other in the booth, and for the first time I saw past the villain my family had painted. He wasn't the unstable disaster they described. He was successful, settled, grounded. He waited until the waitress walked away before he leaned forward. "So," he said, "tell me what happened." And I did. The stolen vacation. The unauthorized charges, the airport fiasco, the screaming, the emails, the breakup with Liam, the fallout, the threats, the silence. David listened without interrupting, elbows on the table, brow furrowed in concentration. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. "It's the same playbook," he said. "Different decade, same script." I blinked. "You really think so?" "I know so," he said. "Your sister and your parents, they don't tolerate boundaries. They tolerate opportunities. There's a difference." I swallowed. "Then why didn't you say something?" I whispered. "Why didn't you warn me?" He gave a sad half smile. "Because when you're inside their world, any warning looks like bitterness, or jealousy, or revenge. You wouldn't have believed me." He wasn't wrong. Then he told me his side. The financial pressure, the family obligations framed as love, the slow creep of expectations, the way they pushed him to take on more, pay for more, solve more, the emotional blackmail disguised as loyalty. And when he began to push back, they turned on him. First quietly, then loudly, then permanently. "I got out before they drained me dry," he said. "You didn't get out. You were never allowed a life outside them. That makes you more vulnerable than I ever was." For the first time, I felt something close to grief. Not for losing them, but for everything I had never seen. Then he made the offer. "I'm running a logistics firm now," he said. "Regional operations. It's grown faster than I expected. I need someone who can manage chaos but stay calm. Someone who can think 10 steps ahead." He held my gaze. "And someone who knows exactly what it's like to hold up a whole system by themselves without ever being thanked for it." My breath caught. "Harper," he continued, "you're not just smart, you're strategic. You don't crumble under pressure, you don't panic, and you know how to build something from nothing." I swallowed hard. "And you think I should, what, work for you?" "No," he said firmly. "Work with me. A proper role, full authority, real pay, room to grow. You'd be managing an entire region by the end of year 1. I stared at him. "What about Liam's startup?" I asked quietly. "That's between you and Liam," David said. "But Harper, you deserve stability, respect, a clean break from all of this." For a moment, everything went quiet. The restaurant noise faded. My pulse slowed. This was the first time in my adult life someone wasn't trying to use me. They were trying to hire me because I was capable, reliable, valuable. Not because I was family. Not because I could be guilted. Not because I was convenient. Because I was good. I didn't say yes immediately, but I knew I would. That night I met with Liam. We sat in his living room, both of us tired from long weeks, long emotions, long everything. "I need to talk to you," I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. "About the offer?" I blinked. "You knew?" He shrugged. "You're not easy to replace, Harper, and people like David don't write letters unless they want something." I sank into the couch. "It's a good offer," I said. "It's stable, it's long-term, and I think I need something that doesn't feel like another gamble." Liam didn't flinch. "I won't be angry," he said softly. "I won't resent you. I want you to take what's best for you. Not for me, not for anyone else, for you." My throat tightened. "You really mean that?" "Of course I do," he said. "I care about you, Harper. I'm not going anywhere." That sentence hit me harder than anything else that week. Because in a life full of people who only loved me conditionally, Liam wasn't one of them. We talked for hours. Not about business, about us, about what trust looked like, about the lines we'd both drawn, about the family we'd lost, and the future we might build. We didn't label anything that night, but when I left, he hugged me in a way that said, "We'll figure this out, together." 2 weeks later, I signed the contract with David. My role, regional operations lead. My salary, nearly $9,000 a month to start, with bonuses. My future, finally mine. I closed my old business formally, moved into a new, quiet apartment with clean walls and sunlight that didn't feel borrowed, began living like someone whose life wasn't an emergency waiting to happen. And for the first time since childhood, I wasn't an ATM, I wasn't a babysitter, I wasn't a fallback plan. I was a woman with options, and that terrified the people who used to control me. The first knock at my new door came 3 weeks later. My mother, holding a Tupperware of something like we were neighbors, not people who had detonated our relationship over $11,500 and a lifetime of expectations. "Harper," she said, "can we talk?" I didn't open the door more than a crack. "How did you get my address?" I asked. She said something vague about a family Christmas list, which told me everything. She had snooped, used old access, maybe even looked through mail before my change of address processed. "And do you plan on paying me back?" I asked. Her face crumpled in confusion. "It wasn't about the money, Harper. You made it about the money." Of course. Of course she believed that. I closed the door. That should have been the end. But that same night, I got an alert from my bank. Suspicious attempt to reset password. Recovery email, my father's. They were trying to get back in. Any way they could. I froze the account. Changed everything again. Filed a report. It wasn't the money, it was the message. "We're not done with you." That message repeated itself again just days later. A note slid under my front door. No envelope. Just handwriting I recognized. "You don't get to erase your blood." My father this time. A warning, a threat, a promise. I sat on the edge of my couch, note trembling in my hand, heart pounding. This was no longer financial. This was personal. This was dangerous. And I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I stared at that note for a long time. Not because the words scared me, but because the handwriting did. I knew it better than my own. The sharp angles, the heavy pressure, the way my father wrote like every letter was a final verdict. "You don't get to erase your blood." He'd always believed that. That family was ownership, not connection, not love, ownership. I set the note down on my kitchen table, my pulse thrumming in my jaw. Then I did what I should have done months earlier. I called building security, reported the incident, took photos, filled out an incident log. The guard pulled the hallway footage. Nothing. Whoever left the note had timed it perfectly, right when the camera cycled through its blind spot. A few seconds of invisible movement in a corridor that was supposed to be safe. Typical, calculated, familiar. After the guard left, I changed into sweats, sat on my couch with a blanket around me, and stared at the wall. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't shaken. I wasn't even angry. I was done. Completely wholly done. And the heartbreaking part? It wasn't because they left me. It was because they would never let me live unless they had a key to every door in my life. I picked up my phone and scrolled to someone I hadn't leaned on in weeks. Liam. He picked up on the second ring. "Harper?" His voice softened. "What's wrong?" "I need to talk," I said, in person. "Give me an hour," he replied without hesitation. "I'll come to you." "No," I said quickly. "Not here. Not tonight." A pause. "Okay," he said. "Where?" We met at the coffee place we'd gone to after our first big argument months ago, the one with dim lighting and too many plants, the kind of place where you could talk about anything without raising your voice. He was already there, leaning back in the booth with concern etched in every line of his face. As soon as I slid into the seat, he reached for my hand. "Tell me." So I did. The letter from David, the new job, the apartment, my mother showing up, the bank account reset, the hallway note, the silent unraveling of a family that couldn't stand to lose its favorite resource. Liam listened with the same stillness he had at the diner weeks earlier, focused, present, unflinching. When I finished, I felt like I'd set down a weight that had lived on my spine for years. He exhaled. "You know the scariest part?" he said. I shook my head. "They still think it's temporary," he said quietly. "Your independence, your boundaries, your success. In their minds, you're just having a moment, and when it ends, you'll come back." My chest tightened. "And you won't," he added. "That's why they're escalating. They see you slipping out of the cage." The word cage made something deep inside me flinch. "Harper," he continued, "you don't have to keep fighting them. You don't owe them access. You don't even owe them anger." He paused. "You just owe yourself peace." I looked at him then. Not at the man my sister tried to impress, not at the man my parents viewed as a potential financial lifeline, but at the man who saw me clearly. And I realized something that terrified me in a different way. I trusted him, fully, completely, and without planning it, my voice cracked as I whispered, "What do I do now?" He squeezed my hand. "You stop giving them ways in," he said simply. "Doors, passwords, emotions, guilt. You shut every one of them." The simplicity of it almost made me laugh. Because he was right. My family didn't need apology or argument. They needed a locked door. I went home that night and did something that felt strangely ceremonial. I sat at my new desk with a blank journal and wrote 2 lists. List 1, everything my family took from me. Money, time, energy, peace, confidence, sleep, opportunities, trust, space, boundaries, stability, safety. By the time I finished, the page looked like a crime scene. Then I turned to a fresh page and wrote the second list. List 2, everything I had since leaving them. Control, money I earned myself, a career that respected me, safety, peace, my own apartment, a future I could choose, people who didn't use me, Liam, myself. When I finished, I stared at the lists side by side. There was no comparison. No grief, no longing, just clarity. I didn't owe them closure. I owed myself distance. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I explained everything: the fraud, the unauthorized charges, the account resets, the uninvited visit, the hallway note, the history of manipulation and financial boundary violations. She didn't hesitate. "This meets the threshold," she said. "We'll draft cease and desist letters for each family member. They will be legally prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly." My throat tightened. "Will it escalate things?" I asked. "It will end them," she said. "Because if they cross this line, it becomes criminal, and they know it." I nodded. "Do it." And she did. The letters went out in certified envelopes the following week. One addressed to my mother, one to my father, one to Tessa, one to my brother, who, drunk or not, warned me when no one else had the courage. Each letter was simple, direct, unemotional. Any further form of contact, calls, texts, emails, visits, attempts to access accounts, would be met with immediate legal action. No threats, no drama, no emotional appeals, just consequences. I expected at least one explosion, one voicemail, one rant, one attempt to break through the new walls. But there was nothing. No calls, no emails, no knocks on my door. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels like snow on an empty street. The kind that feels like the end of a long, violent storm. The kind that feels like peace. The funny thing about endings is that you never feel them all at once. It hits you in pieces. When you wake up and realize you didn't flinch at the mailbox, when your phone buzzes and your heart doesn't race, when you cook dinner without wondering who might show up uninvited, when you sit on your couch and feel the quiet like a friend, not a threat, and when someone you care about, someone who once entered your life as chaos, ends up becoming the calm that carries you forward. Now, when people ask how I'm doing, I tell them the truth. I'm good. I'm free. I'm building. I'm loved. I'm no one's plan B. I didn't just walk away from my family. I walked toward myself. And I'm never going back.